welcome to another episode of the All Punked Up podcast. I am your host, Tyler, and with me is Allie, my co-host today.
What's up?
We have a very special guest in the name of Jason Tate. If you do not know Jason, you absolutely should, especially if you're into the pop punk, emo, alternative scene that we cover. Jason is the creator of the now former AbsolutePunknet site that was oh so popular in the early 2000s. He's since rebranded Absolute Punk as a new music news site called Chorus. Chorus is basically the exact same thing, but instead of focusing primarily on punk, rock, and emo, they cater to all genres of music. Does that pretty much sum it up, Jason?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, Absolute Punk was badly named when I was 15, and it never really made a whole lot of sense with all the music we started covering, even back in like the early to mid 2000s. But it just kind of stuck, and I kept with it until about, I guess, 4 years ago. And being now 37, I felt like it was time to finally move beyond what I had done at 15 and how I had branded myself and everything that I was doing online at that time. Still have a lot of the same musical taste, still have a lot of the same punk ethos, but I really needed to put all of that behind me to feel like, to get into the mindset of what I wanted to do with the rest of my career.
Absolutely. Yeah, that totally makes sense. And, you say, I think you're probably referring to the term punk, basically, kind of pigeonholing yourself. And, when I came up with All Punked Up, thinking, and actually, and we'll get into this, but when Absolute Punk went down, that's when I got the idea to kind of maybe fill that void if there was going to be a void. Mm-hmm. And I remember seeing something that you said, maybe it was in an interview, I can't remember, but you thought, and you kind of just referenced it, you were talking a lot more about a lot more than just punk. And so you wanted to kind of do that.
Open-minded, yeah.
So
for me, it was also not just music, but it was also everything else I wanted to talk about or write about. Like, if I wanted to write about politics for whatever reason, or if I wanted to write about technology, or if I wanted to explore entertainment, I always felt like, it was a joke, long-running joke on the forums of, I thought this was Absolute Punk, and they'd put capital letters on punk. I thought this was supposed to be about this kind of music. And if I would want to write, I don't know, about the new Carly Rae Jepsen album, or if I wanted to write about a new movie that's coming out, cover the Avengers a little bit, write about Apple's WWDC. There's so much more that I wanted to write about, and I hated getting into arguments about what I was supposed to, quote, air quotes around, supposed to be writing about versus what I actually wanted to write about and talk about. And it felt so limiting, and not only limiting in, it was a thing I had done since I was literally 15 years old, but limiting in just the capability of, shedding my skin and being able to talk more freely about the things I was into now, not just the things I was into in high school.
Yeah, that totally makes sense, and it just gives you more freedom to do exactly what you want. So
definitely.
So before we get into the Absolute Punk days and whatnot, obviously we're going through a pandemic right now. How are you holding up? I know you recently got married, so congratulations.
Oh, thanks.
How are you guys holding up?
Well, thankfully we got the marriage in right before the pandemic hit, so I would hate to be trying to. I would hate to be trying to plan a wedding or anything like that right now, and I feel really bad for everybody out there that is, and that the entire world basically got put on hold. For me personally, I work from home. I've worked from home literally my entire life. So this isn't that new to me. I spend most of my day in an office, that little home office in front of my computer, and that part has been the same. Thankfully, my routine works really well with, staying at home and being away from the world and everyone at large. The hard part has been obviously my wife, and she is a violinist by trade. So she performs in the symphony, she teaches college classes, she teaches students, and usually would be going out to their houses and stuff like that to teach, but obviously can't during this. So she's at home. And so we've had to, restructure our day around how we can both be working, and she can do what she needs to do and I can do what I need to do. And basically the magic of Apple AirPods and noise canceling is the solution.
Absolutely. So I also want to touch on real quick, and I hope it's okay with Allie, but I kind of want to nerd out a little bit. So
I'm always down.
I am a web developer for my main gig, and I know that your site is built on WordPress, and and I know you've developed the entire site from scratch. I do subscribe to your newsletter, so that's how I know all this stuff. And I'm just fascinated because I know, as a web developer, I create sites from scratch all day long, every day. I haven't had the opportunity to create my own because I do it all day for other people. And I know it can be very tedious and extremely time consuming. And as a web developer to web developer, what types of challenges have you ran into with the new redesign of Chorus?
Well, for me, the main thing has always been about control. I mean, it makes me not sound great, but I'm a little bit of a control freak when it comes to a lot of those things. Like I have in my head a vision of what I think and want the website to look like and do. And a lot of times when I look at themes, I go, that could maybe get me 80% of the way there. That could get me 90% of the way there. But in these ways, it's not quite right. Or I don't like how they're implementing it in this way. Or if I was doing it, I would do this instead. A lot of this stuff comes down to like responsive design and being like, well, I don't really like the way you guys are doing this, or you're hiding information that I think should be available here. So that's the main reason why I just built everything. And then beyond that, when it comes to the main challenges, the main thing I wanted to do with the redesign was move in a way that the mobile experience felt as first class as the desktop experience. And before, I was basically like, okay, I got to hide the features at the top, can't put those in there because what am I going to do? And so I was hiding a lot of information that on the desktop you would see, whether features, the reviews, things like that. Instead, I wanted to move into a spot where the mobile experience, which is about 60% of our traffic at this point, was as first class as the desktop experience, and being able to highlight the same sort of stuff that you could see on desktop on the mobile. So that's like features, reviews, being able to do things like quick sorting and searching, stuff like that a lot of people really liked and were using on the desktop, bring that over to the mobile platform.
What I like about Chorus too is like, it's very, and I kind of try to do this with All Punked Up too, not have so much distraction. You want people, when people are coming to your site or All Punked Up site, they're there for, the news. They want to see what's there. So you kind of have to give them that and don't make them jump over hurdles or have any obstacles in their way to get to what it is that they're trying to get to.
Yeah, and anyone that's read any sort of website I've been a part of over my career, like that feed has been the main thing that has always been a part of any design I've done. Like it is a chronological feed, top to bottom, reverse chronological of what I posted about the day. I don't want to have giant images that people have to scroll through and, do a collage of 6 different things and that's all they're seeing. I want people to quickly be able to read through the feed and see this is what was posted today. This is what people are talking about. This is what's going on. And if that's all they want to do, great. If they want to do other things, there's other ways to organize the data beyond that.
Yeah, and another great thing about not having the images is the site just will load faster.
That was another big priority. Yeah,
no one has time to wait around. I know, like alt press and stuff. I'm not trying to dog on them, but man, their site is.
I'll dog on them.
Well, I'll dog on them. Their site is absolutely terrible.
I still technically work for one of their web show hosts, so I'm gonna be be honest, but I'm gonna be concise.
That's fine. And we can edit this part out. But we won't go off on a tangent there.
Yeah.
But,
a lot of websites are filled up. I mean, the big problem with the web today is, advertising, JavaScript, everything that's going on with that. And we obviously, the only way we can survive is half our income comes from advertising. And it sucks, and the amount of ads that we have to put on Chorus, I'll admit to it, I hate it. It absolutely ruins the experience and makes the website worse. And if you're a member of the website, those obviously go away, and the speed difference between the 2 versions of the site, it's not even close. Even with the ads, I do everything I can to make the website load as fast as possible, but without them, it's milliseconds, which is a complete damification of everything that the advertising industry is, and not great.
Yeah, the thing with ads too, and I know we won't stay on this topic too long, but the thing with ads, I was running, All Punked Up is on WordPress too. Well, WordPress has their own ad system. I don't know if you know that. It's called Word Ads, but they'd actually pay out way better than Google does. So I was using them for a while, but every once in a while, after like a month or two, people would start complaining like, hey, I'm getting these weird pop-ups. Like, what are these pop-ups? And it was only on mobile too. So it's hard to replicate. And it happened maybe I'd take them down for a while, and I don't want people's experience to be, you know, bad. Otherwise, they're not going to stop coming to the site, you know? And so I took them down, and then I'd bring them back up. And I'm like, well, maybe WordPress took care of it, and they'd come back. So I'm not running any ads on my on our site right now, but yeah, they are oh so important. I agree. One thing that I admire about Chorus, and the same as, you know, Absolute Punk did, is the community you've created on the site. For those of you who don't know, Chorus does news and reviews of albums and songs and that sort of thing, but they also have forums where users can discuss various topics. Jason, can you talk about that a little bit, about the forums?
Yeah, I mean, Absolute Punk was built in a similar way, where anything that we were writing about, I wanted to be able to talk about with people. Like, that was the entire idea behind Absolute Punk, is I wanted a place to talk about music that I liked with other people, because in my high school and even college, that didn't exist. I didn't have a group of people to sit down and talk about Blink-182 with. I didn't have someone to sit down and talk about, hey, the new MXPX album came out. And it's like, I had like 2 friends that maybe would listen to something like that. And the rest of them were like, listen to metal or Nirvana and way different kinds of music than I was into. So I wanted a place to discuss that sort of stuff. So that's where the idea of the forum and all of that kind of originated from, was to have a place for like-minded people to talk about music. With that, like the expanded forum, and when I, you know, transitioned from Absolute Punk to Chorus, the new forum has the same mindset behind it, but I also wanted to be very intentional about what I wanted to create with it. I wanted it to be a place that had more strict moderation in place of, like, this is not going to be a free-for-all. This is not Reddit. Yeah. This is not Twitter. This is not a place where anything can go. And we have, you know, relatively lax rules. Arguments happen. That is something that I've just discovered that is basically impossible online. If you get enough people together, people are going to complain and argue and be mean to each other at times. But the underlying idea was to try to create a community that knew upfront, like, this is not going to be a place where shit posting and trolling people is something that should go on. And I think we've been relatively successful at times with it, and also not great at times, but it's a work in progress to try to continue having a community where people can talk about music that isn't a place just like, you know, it isn't Reddit. It isn't a experience that might not be great for everybody. And with that, a forum that I could, again, design to be how I think an online community should look and act, how I think that notifications and responses and the way that people can interact with each other should look. I use Reddit every once in a while, but it's not great for me. I don't like the user experience, and I don't think Twitter's great for having back and forth conversations. So I still think that the community that we created is what I would like to use to talk about music, entertainment, movies, anything like that. And so, yeah, that's what it is.
Nice. And is that are your forums behind a paywall?
No, the forums are completely free to join. Anyone can use those. The only thing behind a paywall, basically, it's an enhanced experience. It removes all the ads. It gives extra features in the forums. So instead of just being the white background, you can get a cool, like, dark mode theme. Everything's black and slate. You get extra features like bookmarks and extra conversation participants, like just a bunch of different, like, little perks for the experience if you do become a supporting member of the website.
That's really similar to, like, the kind of like subscriptions for Twitch. People who follow their favorite Twitch streamers, it's very similar, where, like, the user experience is just a bit more enhanced if you subscribe to a certain tier of I don't know, commitment, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're trying to do. And we're trying to, the main idea behind the supporting system is, like, I call it a supporter package, like that, because it is about helping the website exist. And about 60% of our revenues ads, and about 40 is supporters. And I'd love for that to switch and be the opposite. And if it was, I could do a lot more and remove more ads and make the experience better. But that's slowly the way that I think we're moving towards, is that if somebody likes the content that people are creating, they can help make it keep happening. And, you know, everything from Patreons to what bands are trying, I think that seems to be the model that the industry in general is moving towards.
So let's go ahead and move into the Absolute Punk days.
Yes.
So Absolute Punk started in 2000 or so, right? Probably around the height of Blink.
Yeah, like the original, I mean, the first thing I tossed online had to be somewhere between 1998, 99, 2000, around there. Right.
So early.
I know. It was like, and the original thing was maybe Angel Fire, maybe Geocities, something like that, where I was completely goofing around, had no idea what I was doing. And I was like, we're going to put up this little like 3-page thing about Blink-182, MXPX. And I think then I had like a little section on like some comics like Calvin and Hobbes and Foxtrot or something like that. And it was literally just, I wanted to see what it was like to put something online. And it didn't take off and actually become like a Blink page until probably about 2000, maybe a little bit before then. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that when you say GeoCities and Angel Fire, that just so takes me back, because that's how we all I guess people my age, your age, Jason, that's where we got our start, like starting with websites.
All the conversations were over AIM. There wasn't any forums. There was no Twitter. It was like everyone had people's screen names and would talk about stuff there.
Right.
I'm just thinking at this point in time, like I haven't even heard punk music yet. Like 1998, I think I was like 4. Like I feel so
I feel so old.
I feel so irrelevant. Like
when did you get into the music scene then?
Oh shit. Well, first of all, I have to getting into the scene. I have to thank my sister Victoria for that. One of my earliest memories was like maybe being like, I don't know, 10 or 11 and seeing the music video for Drive, and I was just like, interesting. And then Victoria like showed me like, I don't know, like she showed me like she showed me a bunch of stuff like Flyleaf, MCR, Panic at the Disco, Fall Out Boy, like all of this like stuff that I definitely wouldn't have discovered on my own, because at that point in time, like I was like a really shy kid, just trying not to like not trying to rock the boat too much.
Was there a first favorite band that you had? Do you remember like the first band you were like, this
band,
it's the one I love?
Crap. I think my first favorite band was probably Panic. Mm-hmm. And probably it's like a tie between Panic and Fall Out Boy, and I don't know, I learned how to harmonize like through those bands, because like I'm a musician now, and I remember like I remember seeing them see them. I'm still to this day haven't seen them live, and I like hope that that's an experience I can have one day. But I remember like seeing their music videos and like their like videos popping up on the early days of the internet of them performing, and I was just like, crap, I want to AOL Live, yeah. That's a throwback.
Oh man.
So yeah, I remember seeing that and I was just like, crap, I want to do that like so bad. And I learned how to harmonize through like listening to them and like singing along and just like obsessively like listening to things over and over and over and over again until like I remember one day I went into choir class and my like teacher was like, Allie, your range has expanded over the break. And I was like, yes, I have.
Thank you, Patrick Stump.
Thank you,
yeah.
Thank you, Grand Theft Autumn. Yeah, actually, now that I think about it, that was the first song. I listened to that song over and whenever that song came out, I don't remember how old I was, but I listened to that song over and over and over again until I knew how to do the melody, the harmonies, everything.
Remember Kurt Loder was on MTV doing like the news in the morning. It was right before high school. I was watching it and they showcased Fall Out Boy or whatever. And that's when I got into him. I was like, that day I went out and purchased the CD and I was like, wow, this is awesome. Showed all my friends. But when you say Grand Theft Autumn, I have no idea what song you're talking about because no, but listen, because Fall Out Boy names their songs so freaking weird. I'm like, I don't know, play the song and I'll tell you if I know it.
You know,
I swear. So where is your boy in that song?
I swear you know it. But yeah.
Okay, I know that one.
But yeah, I don't remember how old I was when that song came out, but that was like the song. And I was just like, this is it. This is it. This is what I'm doing now. This is what my life's going to be now. So yeah, to answer your question, that was probably it. Fall Out Boy and Incubus.
So Jason, you said, you kind of started out on GeoCities, Angel Fire, just, messing around. How did Absolute Punk absolutely get started? Did you just start messing around on those sites to start making a website, or did
Yeah.
it just happen? Did you have an idea first?
I mean, I was 14, 15 at the time. And again, like the internet was very, very early, obviously, with this. Like, we didn't really know what anything was. This was basically tables online and just being able to throw a few little bit of HTML up there. Nothing was dynamic. At most, it was like throwing something to a CGI bin. So it was
West.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. So at the time, I mean, I'm 15 and I'm thinking this internet thing's pretty cool. I like technology. I liked getting into behind the scenes stuff with computers. I liked computers in general. So I wanted to play around with it. And at the time I thought, maybe one day I'll be a web developer. Maybe I'll like make websites. I can make websites. My school needed a website. I helped make the high school website. My dad's company needed a website. I was like, I can help throw this sort of stuff too. So that's where I started just playing around with like, this could possibly be a thing I do. And then with that, I had a love for music and I liked Blink-182. And I started like just thinking like, hey, it'd be cool to like put together like a little fan page type thing for Blink-182. So I started building that, and then I was like, I like this MXPX band, and it started adding on to that, and then more people started finding it, and as more people started finding it, it kind of coincided with Blink-182 becoming very, very popular and the internet becoming popular at the same time. So I just kept updating the website, kept posting the news stuff that I could, had wallpapers, videos, any sort of news I could possibly find about the band at the time. And then as that band got popular and the internet got popular, we just kept expanding, and it just kind of naturally continued to happen. Then I went to college. I graduated high school in 2001, went to college, and it was like that freshman, sophomore year, freshman year mostly into sophomore year, I basically was like, you know what, like, I got some extra time here at school. What else am I going to do? I'm going to expand, and I want to make the website something bigger. And at that point, I realized I was talking about Blink-182 a lot, but I'd always add little things into the news when there wasn't a bunch of Blink-182 news. It'd be like, you guys like Blink. Have you heard this band Newfound Glory? Like, check these guys out. And, ooh, you like Blink-182? Like, you like MXPX? This band called Slick Shoes or Rufio. These guys are cool. And I'd like start throwing that stuff out there. And I realized that a lot of people were responding to that. And I'd get comments of like, oh, this is really good. This is cool. And so I was just like, well, I need to create something that I can talk about all kinds of music. And so that was when I first started expanding the website outward and tried to build some sort of like, the original idea was like Yahoo for punk music. It was like a directory of everything where I could just talk about as many different bands as possible, try to put all the sort of information I had about those bands together. And then over time, the news and the reviews and interviews really were the driving catalyst of the website in general. That's what people came back to every day. And so it became mostly a news related website and less like, here's the wallpapers and here's AIM icons and things like that. And more of here's the news, here's the stuff that's happening, here's the music out today, here are the videos out today. And it just pretty much progressed from there.
So after you changed the site's focus more towards news, I imagine the site just took off. But to back up a little bit, when you mentioned that, the site started to get popular when you were in college, and then you started thinking, how do I, change this or whatever. Where was the traffic coming from? Because nowadays it's super easy to promote your site, but back then you said, the internet was young. When it's fairly new and people and businesses were still figuring it out, how did people even begin to know where to find you or how to find you? Do you remember that at all?
This is how old the website is and Me Online is, because now this sounds insane to say. But the first time I remember a lot of traffic coming to the website was when I went to Yahoo and I was like, hey, Yahoo, I have a Blink-182 music fan page. And this is one of the reasons I named it Absolute Punk, was because A and B go up to the top of the alphabet and their directory was alphabetized.
You are kidding.
And I was like, Absolute Punk, AB, I can get it up to the top of the Yahoo directory. And I saw a vodka ad and I thought, hey, the stuff I'm talking about is kind of punk related. I didn't know what punk was at the time. Blink-182, I was like, this punk isn't. They probably could be. And so that's pretty much where the name came from. And what I was aiming for when I did it is I wanted to be at the top of Yahoo. And I was for a while. And that's
amazing.
And that's a big part of where the original traffic came from, was Yahoo's alphabetized directory.
That is amazing. That's like the biggest business life hack There was a time, and you figured that out. Man, that's awesome. So that's where Absolute came from then.
Yeah, yep. Vodka ad, wanting to be at the top of Yahoo, and kind of thinking it was punk music. And so that's where a lot of it started, was stuff from Yahoo, and then just building out friendships and group working with other websites. So you'd go to like another Blink-182 fan page and be like, hey, you've got a cool Blink-182 fan page. I've got a Blink-182 fan page. We should link to each other. And he'd just tossed up a link on his website. I tossed a link on mine. We had little banners. We had like little like website network things we would try to do of like 5 different sites together would all have like the same like 5 banners, and then people would see that and be like, oh, well, this is cool. I'm going to go over here. And it was just basic linking back and forth, talking with different people, and it slowly, ever so slowly, somebody would start discovering it and then just keep reading it.
That's just amazing.
That entire story just blew my mind. Because as like a younger millennial, like I don't have like a lot of memories of like not a lot of like strong memories of like pre like YouTube or like AOL Live. Like I like have like vague memories of like I saw a video not too long ago. I think it was of Escape the Fates like situations, or like I saw like Taking Back Sundays what's the song? I'm blanking. I just want to break you down. So what's the name of that song? I'm blanking. What's the name?
I know what song you're talking about, though.
Make damn sure. I saw those videos on YouTube the other day, and I was just like, shit. At one point, were these clear? Because it looks like it was shot on a potato. Maybe it's because I just don't have like very strong memories of that stuff. But like that whole story just blew my mind, because I now it seems like so like simple, well, in comparison. So the fact that you had to do all of that is wild to me.
Yeah. I have a big like entrepreneurial mindset. So like any backstories of businesses and how they got to where they are, what successes they saw along the way, what failures they had along the way, you know, it's always just fascinating to me, because all those failures and all the successes shape them into how they are now. And I don't know, it's just, knowing this backstory is, like Ali said, it's mind blowing.
It's really, really mind blowing to me.
For me too, it's like AbsolutePunk just has so much nostalgia for me, because I used the site, and I don't know, it's really neat. So after you changed the site's focus, you started going more newsy. You started getting more traffic. How much more traffic did you think were you seeing on a daily basis, weekly, monthly basis?
Yeah, so like early 2001, 2002, when it first started to transition, the traffic started, exponentially moving upward, to the point where I had to start talking with different hosting companies and trying to find a place to keep the website that could handle it. Stressful for an 18-year-old that's supposed to be going to class. And so I saw that starting to happen, but it was when Fall Out Boy blew up that the website exploded. And that would have been, my sophomore year, roughly, when Take This to Your Grave came out. And as that started blowing up and they started getting MTV coverage, and then other bands in our music scene started getting MTV coverage, and those bands that first were talked about on our website, people started realizing like, oh, this little website over here, not that little at the time, but this website was where that originated, and where most of the content and the new bands like that can be discovered and can be talked about. That was when the website, 20x at that time in page views and traffic, just it exploded. It exploded. And that was the go ahead.
Sorry, no, what were you saying? How did it feel? I was gonna say, how did it feel as like a sophomore in college to have like that?
Overwhelming. Overwhelming in a lot of ways. Like, it was one of those. It was the thought process of, I had no idea what really to do with it. I was still young enough that I didn't know if it was going to be a job, but I thought potentially it could be. But also at the time, it was like I was, I'm putting air quotes around it, like friends/friendly with a lot of these bands. These were people that had just sent me demo CDs, like actual in the mail CDs. The first thing I got from Pete Wentz was a burned CDR that said, "Please listen to my band." And that's around here somewhere. And so I was like, okay, I had like 3. I know I should.
photo?
I'm pretty sure it's on Instagram somewhere at this point. But yeah, and it was like a CDR with his handwriting on it of 3 songs, and that was where it originated from. And so like I felt friendly and like not peers, but like with a lot of these bands, and like so I was excited to watch them explode as much as I was watching this website explode and get popular. And at that time it was like, you know, we'd get mentioned on MTV, and that was exciting. We'd get shout outs from the bands in different ways, and like that was exciting. So it was really just about watching the entire music scene all blow up at the same time, and it was almost happening too fast that I didn't really realize or think too much about everything that was happening. It was just a 4 to 5 year period where everything moved at light speed.
That's awesome. I didn't know that you guys were mentioned on MTV. That's like the best free press ever.
Yeah, at the time,
especially
like,
during that time.
And that's where that's where things started happening. Like a lot of things started happening at the time. Like MTV would source stories to us of things that we wrote about. I mean, we released one of the first songs from My Chemical Romance's 3 Cheers that got mentioned. And they gave it to us to release, and then we were one of the songs from Infinity on High. Pete sent me, and he was like, "Don't tell anyone I sent you this, but the label said you can post it." So we posted that song, and that got a mention. And so like little things like that, like where it would be like before the bands were giant, we were talking about them, posting things about them, and that word of mouth started spreading around, like pre-viral, pre-Twitter, and all of that sort of stuff, where if you knew about this sort of music, this is the kind of place that you would want to go hang out.
Right.
You know, and I bet you the biggest driving factor of all of that was because you had a community. You had those forums still. You had people still commenting.
I think basically the idea at the time, especially, and it started being a part of the music industry in general, was that the website had the ability to break a band, which I don't actually think was true, but that was like kind of the aura around it. Like we'd start talking about My Chemical Romance, they blew up. Taking Back Sunday, they blew up. Fall Out Boy, they blew up. Brand New, they blew up. You know, Panic at the Disco, they blew up. Like all of these sort of bands that we started talking about ended up getting very, very popular. And so I think the music industry in general started then thinking about that, and they'd want to send us stuff, and it just became a cycle. I think that the reason for all of those band successes is definitely removed from Absolute Punk. It just happened to be there at the time and captured all of that. And that was a big reason why we got as popular as we did during that period of time.
So you mentioned before you didn't know if this could become a job, but when you're getting that kind of traffic, you had to have realized this is going to become a job. So, but in order for it to become a job, you have to start monetizing. So how did you go about monetizing when you have these bands sending you stuff? So basically you're going to give them free press. I imagine you didn't charge the bands, because that's not, I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong, but your idea was to, at the time with Absolute Punk, was just to promote bands you like and that sort of thing, you know, just talk about bands you like. So how would you go about monetizing then? Did you go after, you know, like Drive Through Records and say, hey, throw a banner up here, or, you know, whatever, Tooth and Nail, whatever record companies are around then?
Yeah, this was pre-Google, pre-Facebook, them coming into the space and ruining advertising for basically everyone online, and driving the prices down to pennies per click. And so I teamed up with a company called Indieclick, and Indieclick was a small little ad firm, I believe based in California, and I forgot who first put me in contact. It might have been Fearless Records. It might have been John at Tooth and Nail. Somebody was like, hey, we're buying a bunch of ads through this company for their other websites they're doing ads for. If you worked with them, that might be a good way for you to get out of the ad selling business, because that is something that I absolutely despise. I do not like the advertising industry. I do not like being the person that is the go-between of, hey, here's the banners, put them up. They need to be here, negotiating prices, making sure you get paid. All of that was like the exact thing I didn't want to be doing, and
I just wanted for someone, just not you.
Exactly. I wanted to be writing about the music. I wanted to be doing the website running portion. I did not want to be chasing down invoices and emails. So I started talking to Indieclick, and they were like, "Yeah, we'll bring you on board." And they basically had, I think at the time, 10 websites or so that they were running and selling ads for, and by adding us, which I'm pretty sure at the time were either the biggest or the second biggest website they had. they then were able to buy at scale with advertisers. And so they would go to record labels, was a big part of it, major labels, indie labels, all advertising, and say, hey, here's like the kind of traffic we can do. And because advertising was still, web advertising was still a pretty big thing at that point, that's where 99% of the monetization came from. And all of it was based on just having a lot of traffic and people wanting to be in front of those people. And then as time went on, bigger advertisers started being a part of it. So it wasn't just like your Drive Through Records or your Epitaph or whatever, but places like Coca-Cola and Mint Double Gum and whatever, like all of those sort of advertisers were then getting online as well. And they had giant advertising budgets, and they were just like, what are the sites that have lots of traffic? And we want to get in front of the 18 to 24 demographic. So what are those websites? And at the time, AbsolutePunk was a big one. And so that was a big reason for being able to draw in that sort of advertising. Obviously, then when you start going down the path of advertising and they're throwing a lot of big money around, that's when you start worrying about how much influence they actually have on things you need to do on the website. And so
sure.
How big do the ads need to be? They always want bigger. They want sound. They want things popping up. They want full screen takeovers of all of this stuff, and that's where it becomes a nightmare. But that was the original part, was Indieclick, and that was like, if I could go back to any time and say that was like the perfect version of everything I liked about doing the website, it was probably right around then, because I felt way less pressure about advertising. Everything seemed so simple. It was a basic graphic. There was no traffic tracking on the ads, very little JavaScript. It was like, hey, here's the image, here's a band, they're releasing this sort of album. All of you want to know this album's coming out, here it is. It's not moving too much. There's no crazy flying animations. It's not flashing in your face. It's not too big. And it just seemed like that worked at the time. Tooth and Nail wanted to let you know Amberlin's releasing a new album, Underlow's releasing a new album, and the millions of people reading the website knew about it. And that seemed like a really good trade-off. And unfortunately, we don't really have that anymore.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. I feel like that could still work. I would like to imagine that it would come back to some degree.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that a lot of it is that, especially bands and record labels, I think that a big part of what they end up doing is going to Facebook and Instagram and things like that and saying, like, these are the people that already follow me. These are my core fans. Say I'm releasing a new album, or I'm releasing a new merch run, new vinyl pressing. I'm going to target just these people and boost my posts. And maybe they're willing to spend, $500,000, something like that. And they'd much rather try to put their money there than coming to, say, even my website now and giving less money, but you're going to hit a much larger portion of your of the group of people versus just the people that already follow you. And it kind of comes down to, like, it sucks that Instagram works this way, but you're paying to reach the people that already like you versus, am I trying to expand outward, and how does this all work? And I don't envy them, but that is the system that is been created. And so I get it to some degree, and I understand. I still think that we have a pretty good ad product in general. I think that one of the things that we sell is like a sponsored post on the website, and we sell one per week, and you get a post in the news feed basically at the beginning of the week, and then something that stays at the top of the page the entire week, and then there's a shout out in the newsletter and stuff like that. And that to me remains extremely valuable, and it's probably underpriced based on the amount of people that it actually does reach. But I think that the people that have done something like that with us always at the end are like, oh, that actually drove more traffic than we expected. And it's like, still a lot of people still read the website. It's not Absolute Punk size on purpose, but a lot of people still do view the website and read what we write about every single day.
Yeah, I can't agree more. And to stay on the money topic, one of my questions that I'm really looking forward to hearing the answer to from you is, you sold Absolute Punk at one time. Can you walk us through that decision and how it came about? You don't have to disclose any figures because it's nobody's business, but I'm just fascinated by, those types of stories, like the acquisitions and then and all that.
That's funny, like that you mentioned that, because I just happened to last week, I've been doing a feature on the website where each week I break down my best of list and the Absolute Punk best of list from past years. So I started in 2005 and I've been working my way up and being like, hey, these were the albums that everyone was talking about these years. This is what was going on in the music scene at the time. 2005, one of my favorite years ever for pop punk. That's From Under the Cork Tree, Fall Out Boy stuff, Commit This to Memory from my Motion City soundtrack, and all of that sort of thing. So as I've been going through that, I worked my way to 2008, which was the year that I sold the website to, at the time, BuzzNet, which then became, they originally were BuzzNet, then Buzz Media, then Spin Media. And so I've been thinking a lot about that entire thing. And 2008 to me is a odd year. It's the year, obviously, where we finally move away from George Bush and President Obama gets inaugurated. It's also as we are just about to hit a global recession and everything is up in air. What I remember most about that year, though, is that the website was doing so much traffic, I couldn't keep the website up. Like, I could not keep the servers up. And I was talking to people about how to expand. And now it's funny because, web traffic and the way that everything scales online is pretty easy. Like, I can keep the servers that we have up right now for, I don't know, cost maybe $200 at most per month to keep everything going, even with the bandwidth that we have. At the time, it was thousands of dollars. And I was spending thousands of dollars a month to keep the website up because of how much traffic it was doing and just how expensive servers and the internet was at that time. So I knew that, like, the only way to keep going is I either needed to bring in capital myself, which would mean either reaching out to venture capitalists and trying to raise money, take out loans, or sell. And basically at that point, I had friends at BuzzNet and they had just raised a new round of capital and they were trying to expand outward and they wanted to buy a bunch of websites and basically create a giant network that they could sell ads against. And they were talking to places like StereoGum, punknews.org, and us. And when they started talking to us, and a big part of the pitch was, you can keep running the website exactly as you are right now. We're just going to, instead of Indieclick running your website or your web ads, we'll run your web ads. And we'll take over hosting. We'll take over all of the other stuff. We just want to be basically the ad company, and we'll give you an upfront payment and a salary. And at that point, I had been out of college 3 years, and that kind of safety net and stability was something I had not seen. And the idea of not stressing over servers at 3 o'clock in the morning crashing was very enticing to me. So it was a big, long thought process that I had, but I ended up thinking that for us to continue to grow and to be what we were, this was the best course of action at the time. And then I learned very quickly about what it's like to be caught up into the machine of a VC-backed world and all of that. But that was my original thinking, was that it was a stability and safety net sort of thing. And it was either that or I was going to have to figure out a way to raise money myself to keep the website even running.
So I know you end up getting the site back, but before you got the site back and before the actual acquisition, was there any verbiage in the contract that was like you were going to be given an opportunity to get the site back? How did you get it back?
Yeah, so I mean, I was there, 4 years ago from now, so it was like five plus years with Spin. And at the time, no, like basically I was an at-will employee after the first 3 years. But the benefit and downside of, I guess, Absolute Punk at the time was I wrote literally every single line of code on that website, and it was garbage. So no one else could run the website without me to begin with. So it made it very difficult for them to just be like, after 3 years, be like, yeah, we're done with Jason. We're gonna hire younger, cheaper people to keep posting stuff on the website because it couldn't run. So that helps. And
job security.
Yeah.
Security, yep.
Security through garbage PHP code. So the website at the time continued to do well in traffic, continued to make them a whole lot of money, and basically subsidized a lot of other properties that they were buying. So they would buy, other websites that did not do as much traffic, weren't as popular and weren't as valuable, but we were making a lot of money. They weren't paying me nearly as much money as they were making. And so we were subsidizing a lot of their other acquisitions. It was a very poorly run company. I don't want to get too much into it, but it was extremely poorly run, extremely badly managed. And for like, just for example, like I think the round of funding they did right before they bought my website was something like $25 million. And they were able to burn through that within 9 months, something like that. And the idea of having that much money at that time in the internet and not being able to make a group of websites work is mind-boggling to me. But then you look at the amount of money they spent on renovating offices and executive perks and all the different things that they did, and it makes a whole lot more sense. So as that continued to go and they then decided like, hey, we're not doing very well, that would have been what, 2012, something like that. They realized like they were going to basically go under. Like basically, they didn't file for bankruptcy, but they filed for like a corporate version of bankruptcy. Sure. And at that time, they were basically going to sell off all the assets to everyone else or to whoever wanted it. And that was when I started talking to them about the idea of like, hey, this is a thing from my childhood. Like, this is a thing that I created. I knew at that time I did not want to keep doing it. I was completely burnt out, but I knew that I had the idea in my head of what Chorus would end up being, and that I wanted to do something like that. And if I could get, at the very least, the domain name back for not too much of a cost, that I would be willing to do it. So I first talked to them about like just buying the website back in general, and they wanted way too much money to buy back the database, to buy back everything. And I was just like, there's no way. Like I'm not going to pay that for something I really don't want to keep doing anyway. I was completely ready to be done with that entire part of my life and my history. I didn't want that baggage around or there anymore. Like I would rather quit and go get any other job than keep doing that. That's how burnt out I was at the time. So when they said that, I was like, okay, well, what about the domain name? Can I buy just the domain name and like the IP, like the logo, all that sort of stuff back? And they were like, sure, here's the cost. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. And so that was what I did at the time, with the entire idea of using it as a transition to move to Chorus.fm.
Gotcha. So, okay, so you get the domain back, you get the logo, so now you can use that on merch and all that, so that's good. But so at that time, so you get it back. Is it right then and there you decide to rebrand as Chorus? Do you take time off? What happens?
I knew
you were burnt out, so like how do you like?
Yeah, right.
I knew like there's like a 3-month period where they were going completely belly up, right? Like that entire company was in big trouble. I knew they were in big trouble to the point where they weren't paying me. I had to get lawyers involved. They weren't paying other companies. They were struggling, would be a nice way of putting it. So I knew they were in trouble. So I knew that like I had to think about, what do I want to do next? Is there anything that I want to do next? What would be the next version of if I wanted to stay online, and I gave a lot of thought to the idea of just being like, screw it, I'll just go I'll either consult around here, do web development somewhere. I can get basic other jobs. Like I'd rather go, I don't know, work retail. Like I think I honestly thought about like anything that I would rather go do than continue the path that I felt like the website was on at that moment in time. And so given all of that, as I sat down and kept thinking about what would the next 5 to 10 years of my life look like, I realized that the original things that I had of why I started Absolute Punk still existed. I still really like music. I still really like technology. I still really like talking about music, and I still really like talking and doing cool things with the technology. So if I could bring that together in a new way that felt much more me here in the middle of my, at that point, early 30s, what would that look like? And I knew that meant it had to be something much smaller, that I could not handle that sort of day-to-day beating. I knew that it had to be basically me. I did not want to manage other people. I did not want to try to manage other people. If people wanted to contribute and do things on their own, I was completely okay with that, but I did not want to have a content calendar that I had to beat over everyone's head to put stuff together and do this. Like I was completely burnt out on that. I was like, I want to write about the things I want to write about. And if that's 5 things a day, if that's 30 things a day, I don't care. Like I just want it to be what I want to actually write and I think's interesting. And took a guess that there was potentially people out there that would also want to read something like that, and that would want a new community that they could join that wasn't as toxic as other places, including what Absolute Punk was at the time, and decided to launch the website with those sort of core ideas in mind and being like, let's just see what happens. And at that point, it was like, I'm going to give it a year and let's see if it can make money that I can live on, and let's see what happens. And after 1 year, I was like, that worked. Let's give it another year. Let's see what happens. And it's basically just been a evaluation every year to 6 months at this point that I keep looking at the numbers, looking at how things are doing, looking at where I'm at in life. And do I still have the same drive and desire to keep doing this as a thing? And as long as all of that keeps meshing together and working well, the economics of it and my personal love for these things, I'll keep doing it. And if that the calculus of that in the equation ever changes, I'll stop. I'll figure out something else and go whatever. And if that gets forced upon me because the economy is in the gutter after a pandemic and we don't know what the ad revenue is going to do, so be it. But that has been the mindset so far.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, the state of the music industry is just really up in the air right now.
So, Jason, you said that you didn't want the headaches that, the Absolute Punk days kind of brought on when you started getting huge and whatnot. I imagine now, with Chorus, you said you didn't want to manage people. You don't want to have the content calendars and that sort of thing. You are basically doing exactly what you wanted to do now. So, but with running a news site, I mean, I've run into them too. I'm curious to know what yours are. What sorts of challenges do you run into running a news site now?
A lot of the challenges are around deciding what to post, what not to post, and how to use the voice and the privilege of the voice that I have in a way that I feel comfortable with and can sleep at night. And obviously, the elephant in the room with that is our music scene is and has been extremely toxic to minorities, women for a very long time. And I read you guys' website, so I see that you guys post about all the different accusations and stuff that come out against musicians on a regular basis, and how to cover that in a way that I think I'm doing it in the right way, and how to give that sort of use the platform that I have in a way that I feel comfortable with, and am trying not to elevate the worst of the music scene, but also trying to keep up to date, and also at the same time trying to keep my mental health in a way that I can handle it and not spend all the time just reading the worst of the worst over and over again, diving into these accusations and this, and which one should I talk about, and which band has responded and how, and should I just not post about that band anymore, or did they quit? Yeah. Oh wait, they're back, but they kicked out that member. And so are they okay to post about, and what is going on there? And all of that is by far my least favorite, all of it. And that is a big challenge. And
that's the same for me too. And there's been times where I talked to the group before and I was like, hey, we're not going to be posting about X right now. For whatever reason, I just don't feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah, I have two stories that I want to share based off of both musicians passing away and about the BLM movement right now.
Sure.
So I remember I used to work for this one website. I'm not gonna name names. I remember when Mac Miller passed away. We of course reported on him on his death. We reported about how his family was taking it, what this means for any music that he was planning on releasing, all of that kind of stuff. But I remember it was a week or so later and we were still reporting on it. Not that it didn't matter, obviously his presence in the music industry was huge and he had such an impact on so many people's lives. But it kind of got to a point, I remember halfway through my work day, we were still churning out stuff relating to the Mac Miller, and I was like, there's other stuff happening today though, guys.
Yeah.
It was weird because at first the first 3 or so articles that I worked on regarding to that, or editing about that, it was fine, it made sense, it was reactions from friends, family, you know, his hometown had a memorial. That made sense, but it just kind of kept going, and I was just like, this is overdoing it. This is over, for a lack of a better word, overkill on somebody that passed away. It just made me, it really rubbed me the wrong way. And then as for people posting for music websites and magazines posting about BLM movement, I remember there was this one article that came out from a news organization, again, not gonna name names. They put out a listicle about like people that you should listen to, like bands comprised of solely like POC like members, and I was like, cool content, you know, music in general, punk music, rock music, all started from the efforts of people of color. So like, duh, that should be recognized, because I hate to say it, but it's a fact that, like, you know, earlier you said that the scene is mostly run by white guys, and that's true.
Yep.
It is true, and it's very unfortunate that people who actually started the genre don't get enough credit for a lot of the work that they started. So, you know, they put out this listicle, and I looked at it, and, you know, I noticed in a lot of the comments that they were like, this list is bullshit. I did some looking at it, and I was just like, these bands are either A, like, not together anymore, or B, like, they don't have like the same members anymore. Don't get me wrong, like, I was happy to see, like, I mean, even if those bands aren't together anymore, or if they have different members, like, it just, the way that I was glad to see coverage in general, but, you know, whenever you read more into it, you could just see that there was a lot of lazy journalism done, and that made me very, like, frustrated, because I was just like, this is not cool. This is really lazy.
I think a lot of that ties back into what I was talking about just a few minutes ago about one of the things I wanted to not do when I started a new website. And a big part of that was I stopped looking at analytics. And what I would do, I spent too much of my time earlier was like looking at what articles did really well and being like, oh, this was really good. We should write more about this. And at the time, Spin was even pushing things like, hey, this article did really well, just rewrite it and do like add a couple little extra stuff here and push this out, push this content out. And it was always a push of like more content. This is what's popular, keep writing about this. And you see it where some publications will basically rewrite the same thing, or like, here's these artists' reactions to this thing, and here's, you're just posting their tweets. Like that's nothing. Like that, you're just showing 3 tweets about people reacting to somebody's death. I don't understand what this is. Like, this does nothing for anybody. So I wanted to get completely away from that. I mean, I look at analytics basically once a week, very, very minimally, to get an idea of where traffic's coming from, what's popular, what sort of things people are interested in, but don't base anything that I write about ever on analytics. And if the thing gets 2 views or 20, but I wanted to write it, I'm completely happy with that. And I think that a lot of publications, unfortunately, because the business model is built to how many page views can you get and how many times can you throw up ads on here, they are incentivized to write basically clickbait garbage to get as many people as possible to view that page as many times as possible. And however they can do it, that's what they're doing. And like, that sucks. And that is completely the main thing that I wanted to get away from, and never feel like I need to write something based on that. Like, I need people to click on my little thing just to see another version of something I've already written 4 different times.
Right.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, I used to work for a website that was exactly like that. And honestly, like, I was grateful for the company that it was a part of, because it was a company I really admired. But the website itself, like, whenever I had to do like 6 to 8 articles in a day, and if it was an issue that was related to something that was previously reported on, I was told by editors, you can just copy paste it from the previous article and just like shift it a little bit so it's more current. And I was just like, it was honestly like kind of demoralizing.
That is very demoralizing.
It was demoralizing.
That makes me want to die inside.
I wasn't doing it well enough.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I'm a journal. I remember I finished that whenever the contract was ended. I like left feeling like I couldn't write anymore. It was awful.
Did you have length requirements? Like, were they asking, like, we want this article? See, because that's the other thing that bugs me. I don't like reading the articles where you can tell that the publication has been like, you have to make this article longer. And you're like, so your headline is XYZ. You don't actually get to XYZ until 2 paragraphs down because you had to fluff up the entire piece. And it's like, this is a sentence post. This is one sentence. That's all it needs to be.
Okay, wait. Here's my one thing. I like agree, but also disagree with you. So like, I personally am not a fan of the one sentence article because me as a journalist, I don't think of that as an article. That's like a headline. That's a tweet. That personally like gets on my nerves. Personally, I know Tyler and probably you disagree with me, Jason, but like I feel like at minimum for a news post, if it's like something like, oh hey, these people premiered this today, it should be like at least a paragraph.
I get that. Like, yeah, I understand both sides of the argument. I've always been the person that just wants the information and just wants to get out and be like, the band released X, I'm done with it, versus the band released X. And if there's other information like, and it's a part of this album or it's a part of this album release, and here's the pre-order, that I'm interested in. The stuff that I always like, that I find hard to parse, and this is just, probably just my ADD brain, but like reading something and it's like, so the band's releasing song X, right? And the first paragraph is about how they released song Y 2 weeks ago. And I'm like, well, I don't care that they released this song 2 weeks ago. Like, and then there's 2 embeds and I'm like, which one's the new song? Like,
exactly.
Well,
I can't figure it out. So badly written articles are the problem. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. That's poor organization, I think.
Exactly.
If you want to include something that was previously written, put that at the bottom. Be like, after you're done describing the song and like if there's a music video, maybe what's happening in the music video. Are there any like cool like band references in the music video that you think that fans will catch? La da da da. Like at the end, you can be like, this like music video follows like the premiere of their last release, which was like a week ago. You can see the article here, put in the hyperlink, and that should be the end of it. Like that kind of stuff should be at the end.
Yeah, I think definitely. I agree with you. Yeah. It's the poorly written version of those that I think I have a problem with. It bumps me out that you being put through the process is what got you off of wanting to write in the first place. And especially like I see a lot of people that are very passionate about music, and I see a lot of people that are passionate and want to share different things. And first of all, you're a genius. Going into podcasting and video is absolutely what I should have done at some point, but I just didn't. And I mean, I had a podcast for a while. It bums me out that the system that has been built up with all of these different publications like decentivizes and demotivates people from doing something that I think is really exciting. And what I've always liked about the internet is having people share their opinions, however it be. But the written word, obviously, I've always been attracted to. But it sucks that the way that we have built this entire ecosystem of news publishing, people are disincentivized to want to continue to do it because they are told, spit out this type of content, do this. Basically, a computer could do it. It's an algorithm, but we're using human beings to do it. And that sucks. Like that part removes so much of the humanity of why somebody that's passionate about music should be writing about music. Cause like, I want your opinion on music and to be able to read and be like, oh, she really likes this, this, and this. This is really cool. Now I'm going to follow her and get like information about what she's doing. And that can never come if all you're doing is spitting out the same, like, well, Mac Miller tribute #1, Mac Miller tribute #3. It's like, well, I don't get to learn about the writer. I don't get to learn about the author. I learn nothing besides, oh, there's a byline here that maybe I read, and it does no value to you as the writer anyway. You don't get to build up a brand. You don't get to build up people that want to talk about what you're doing because you're just one name on a basically generic piece of content. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I have currently. I will show it on this like video right now. I currently have 1,037 emails.
Oh my god!
Unread emails.
You're one of those people.
Mostly, it's mostly. Here's the thing. It's mostly PR people and like bands and people that are reaching out to me to write music. To write about music. And I don't know. Obviously, the pandemic has not helped my motivation at all. And if anyone that has sent me an email is by any chance listening to this, I am so sorry for not answering or not opening your emails. But it's just that whole experience. And then just all of this added dumpster fire of the world just, going topsy-turvy. I don't know what happened to me as a writer, and it's really frustrating. I want to say, to the people that demoralize me, if they are also listening to this right now, I hope you're doing okay, and I hope you are, not treating people like trash anymore. That would be nice.
So Jason, with Chorus, you just did the redesign. I know that took you a while. Where do you see Chorus going from here? I know you take it year by year, but where would you like to see it go in the future?
Well, right now, a big thing is I'm looking at the community, looking at if there's anything that I can do there to make it easier to use, better to use. The next coding project is bringing Apple Pay to the supporter membership program, just convenience of use, little things like that. But from the website itself, what I really wanted to focus on as soon as I finished the redesign is I realized my brain goes in weird ways, and it starts with like, okay, I'm really into the coding. I really am diving into all of this technical stuff, and now I need a break from that, and the itch that I want to scratch is writing. So the big thing that I've been doing recently is trying to get back into writing longer form pieces on a more regular basis, and for the last couple of weeks that's taken the form of that nostalgia piece I've been writing about reevaluating things from the past, and I've been doing that on Wednesday. So it's like each Wednesday I'm trying to get a longer form article out, anywhere between 1,500 to 2,000 words. I want that. And then I want something on Friday that's the newsletter that I've been putting out, the Liner Notes newsletter, which is more about what music came out this week and last that I liked, what I've been listening to, what entertainment that I've been watching, and what I think about it, and any other things online that I found interesting, like this app's really cool, or these articles were really good, or this live performance from Phoebe Bridgers was awesome. Everyone should check this out. Things like that. And I aim for that to be anywhere between 15 to 1,800 words as well. So I've been trying to get back into scratching the itch of the long form writing sort of thing that I like to do without it becoming monotonous or necessarily about like one thing. Like I do like writing album reviews, like that is something I like, but I don't want to do that. Like that's not what I want like the Wednesday article to be. I don't want it to be like, here's one album review, let me break it down. I want it to be a different, more, I don't know what the right word is, like expanded outward piece about something that I'm thinking about and I find interesting and helpful, but not necessarily like, let me just write about, the new album from XYZ.
Gotcha. Like in long form, like op-ed, if you want to like.
Yeah.
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 More long form, like notes on.
Yeah, 100% opinion, something where like I want to talk about something in a little bit more detail, but stretch those muscles. I haven't spent 6 months basically only coding and not writing as much, and so these next few months I'm focusing on that. And there's other things that I obviously want to do. We talked about like Encore in the podcast. That is something that has been on my list to figure out a better way to relaunch at some point as well. I want to do that, and I want to keep bringing new ways of exploring the content and things that I'm interested in to people, and continue obviously expanding the website, not too quickly. I don't want it to go crazy, sure. but I do want the website to continue to expand and to people that maybe don't know about the sort of stuff we write about, like for them to find it. And for the younger generation that maybe is only discovering music through Spotify or only discovering music because they discovered on YouTube, I still think there is some value to the idea of reading through a newsfeed and being like, hey, this person recommended this, I can check it out right now. And I know that's not what a lot of people in the next generation behind me do, but I still think that there's some fun stuff there. And there's also value in the people that have been reading me for, now at this point, 20 plus years of continuing to want to find out what I'm listening to or how to get back into some music that maybe they forgot about. I have friends or people that talk to me and are like, oh yeah, I used to read your website. That was cool. Like, what's like Yellow Card doing? It's like, well, I can tell you what they've done for like the last 10 years. Maybe like we should discuss that. Or like I used to listen to like scene music, but now I just I toss on the same music I listened to when I was in college, and I haven't tried anything new. It's like, well, there's still a huge amount of music that I think that you would be into. Maybe not the exact same music you listened to back then. Maybe some of these new bands are things that you would enjoy, or there's stuff that's been a deviation of all of that or influenced by all of that stuff that you should check out and you'd really like because you really like those bands back then. And there's some new artists that have been influenced by them that are making great music today, and like that people can still expand their music tastes or even discover new music now that isn't based on an algorithm, isn't based on just seeing something in a playlist, or it just being nostalgia based on what they used to listen to.
Totally. That's a really cool thing. I was thinking whenever you said that person said, well, I used to read your website. You're like, there's this idea of like, well, you used to, but how can we turn used to
yeah.
That's funny. Like, yeah, that's definitely been something I think about a lot, like a whole lot. In not necessarily because I want every single person that read Absolute Punk to read my website now, because I know I'm writing about different things, and I know that it is not the same website. And I've had people be like, just relaunch Absolute Punk, and I'm like, that is not what I want to do. That is not, right. That is completely the opposite of like I don't think mentally I'd be able to handle it, and that is not a thing that is where I'm at and what I want to write about these days anyway. But I do think there is a subsection of that, people that got a lot of value out of what Absolute Punk was and a lot of value out of the bands we were writing about and what that community was. And that still exists at Chorus. If you want the community, it is there. But even just scanning through our news page on a day-to-day basis or reading some of the reviews or reading some of the articles, I do still think can give people that same sort of feeling. And a lot of the bands are things that I do think are directly tied to stuff that was going on in Absolute Punk. Like, I mean, I still write about freaking Scott Sellers, the lead singer of Rufio. I think I'm the only person alive that probably still even is writing about what Scott Sellers is doing on a day-to-day basis. Acceptance is going to release a new album. Hardly anybody talks about that band anymore. We're still talking about those bands. We're still talking about a lot of that without trying to be only nostalgic and looking backwards. We also want to talk about great new music. Phoebe Bridgers released an incredible new album week before.
Yeah, it was amazing. I cried.
But I still want to write about that sort of stuff too, and like introduce people to that sort of thing and be like, this is great, check that out. And I don't know, that's been the goal, and that's been what I've been continually trying to do, and we'll see what happens.
Gotcha. So clearly the Absolute Punk days brought a lot of stressful memories, it seems like, from this conversation.
Yeah, I'm really sorry if we caused you any stress.
but at the same time, all of everything that happened with Absolute Punk has shaped you into who you are today, into what Chorus is today. So looking back, what are the fondest memories? What are the best memories that you have of running AP?
I mean, from the start, like the music stuff, it comes back to that immediately. So the music stuff are the memories that I have the fondest memories about. The first time that we talked about a band and all of a sudden, they're getting a Grammy, Paramore winning a Grammy is crazy to me. The idea of Fall Out Boy blowing up to the level they did, the idea of Yellow Card blowing up to the level that they did in the early days, the bands that we started talking about that all of a sudden like either got to have a career for a brief moment or still have a career in part because of us writing about them. That to me is extremely exciting. And watching those bands go from tiny little things that are sending me MP3s to, My Chemical Romance being so big I can't even comprehend how big they are at this point. That to me are the fond memories. Beyond that, the other things that I have is just how it ended up shaping me as a person, and a lot of that is based on the community, and a lot of that is based on talking to different people and hearing from different voices that were not in my circle, that were not in like I grew up in a suburban town in Portland, Oregon, and I would not have been exposed to these different ideas, these different ways of thinking, and these voices in general without the internet and without Absolute Punk. And it took a long time to learn how to listen to a lot of that, but also a long time to see and question things that I had thought about. And I think that that sort of education process, which continues to this day, has been very beneficial for me. And I think that's something that I really take from it, especially during these times where we're obviously seeing so much civil unrest here in our country and the garbage fire that it continues to be. But I think that process from a young, fuck the government punk kid in the 1998, which I didn't really understand, all the way up to now and listening to, Songs of Revolution and music like in that vein, and probably feeling the punk ethos today more than ever, which I find interesting, but it is where it is.
Anything you want to promote, or your newsletter or your merch, anything like that?
Check out the website, course.fm. If you're interested in the newsletter, it's course.fm/newsletter. It goes out every Friday. Obviously, I'm writing a longer article on Wednesday. That's always something we're doing. But even just like scanning through the website and taking a look at it, if you did like Absolute Punk or you do like music like this, these are the sort of things that I am still writing about. And you mentioned earlier the idea of people that used to read my website. And I think about that a lot. Sometimes I take it probably in the same way that bands do, where they're like, I liked your old album. And I'm like, oh, I finally get why they were so pissed off whenever anybody would say that. It's like, yeah, okay, like that's fine. But like, yeah. I hope that people also are willing to give the new stuff a chance. I don't think it's as far removed from Absolute Punk as sometimes it gets played, because I do feel like a lot of the bands and the music that we are writing about are the same things I would have been writing about anyway, because I'm still the same person and I wrote the majority on Absolute Punk and I write the majority here. And like, this is what I would be covering probably there anyway. It's a new name and I think a better website. So I'm happy with it. And that's basically it. I really appreciate you guys having me on the podcast. It was a lot of fun.
Just make sure, guys, that you check out chorus.fm, subscribe to the newsletter, go buy some vintage Absolute Punk merch, do all the things. Yeah. Thanks for listening. Thanks, Jason.
Thanks for listening. I'll catch y'all in the next one. Bye.
Peace.